My name's Huskey and I'm currently a visiting maker at Northlands Creative in Leicester. Today that we've been making a two-toned vase in the glass blowing studio with Frankie assisting. Here we're using a mini melt furnace. So we load it with clear nuggets of glass, and then I also then put the colours within a top loading kiln. These colours have to heat up so that they become sticky. And then basically we will gather molten glass out of the furnace to allow us to pick these colours up and to mix them together. To gather the glass, we get one of the irons. It has to be warm on the end, otherwise the glass won't stick. And we go into the mouth of the furnace, and you need to rotate a few times to actually allow the glass to stick and for you to get the right amount. And then as you come out, you scoop it out and pull the iron out. The bigger the piece, the more times you have to go back into the furnace, because you simply can't take out all that you need in one go because of it being a liquid. So what we do is we build it up over layers. So each time we go in, we gather, bring it out, and then I either use a wet wooden block or I use newspaper that's been soaked, and I shape the glass and actually cool it down. Now that we've got the right amount that I think to make the piece, I then shape it and I get Frankie to actually blow down the pipe while I'm cooling certain sections with the paper. At that point, I also need to use some of the tools which are called jacks and actually create a score line around the top of it. If you don't have this, you cannot remove the glass from the blowing iron. And the blades of the jacks are coated in beeswax. This allows them to glide along the molten glass and not stick. Once the score line, the jack line's in, I then can get Frankie to inflate it a lot more. Because I want it to be a taller vase, I'm actually going to use gravity to lengthen the bubble. So I get it nice and warm, I hang it down and I actually swing it while turning, and this allows the force to create the longer form. After it's at the length that I would like, I can then heat the bottom section of it, and I will use the jacks now on their sides while Frankie uses a wooden paddle on the bottom, and this creates a nice sharp base. You can do this multiple times, which will allow it to be even crisper. At this point, it's now ready to be transferred onto another iron. This iron is a punty iron, it's solid, and it's basically just a little bridge of glass that allows me to open up the top of the vase. Frankie brings it to me at the bench and I try to attach it to the centre of the piece. Once it's attached, we have to wait for that to be cool enough that it's controllable but not too cold, because the piece could fall off. 2 small bits of water are put onto where the jack line is, a tap of the iron, and it should break off mine and go onto the solid punty iron. You then are working from the top back, and I'm now trying to get the heat back into it to allow me to open up the vase to be its cylindrical shape. I don't want the back to be too hot because I've already set it to the shape I want. So it's now about just flashing the glass, which means you go into the reheating chamber for 5 seconds and then just heating the very top. At this stage as well, I'm wanting to thin out the rim, and where I've put the jack line in, it can be a bit thicker. So I use my tweezers to pull part of the glass, and then I actually use shears to cut the molten glass to create a straight top. The cutting of the glass is really lovely. You actually feel the pure material, and it's one of my favourite parts of the process. We can then use the jacks and a wooden board. The wooden board is just keeping the rim straight and the jacks are opening up. Once the shape is how I want it, Frankie will get herself ready with gloves and a visor, because it has to be annealed, which means that you cool the glass slowly over a number of hours. And then I put a couple of spots of water on it, give it a tap, Frankie captures it, and it goes into the annealing oven. Once the vase has been cooled in the annealing chamber, it can come out and the true colours will be revealed. So when the piece is hot, you never actually get to see its colours. The heat just takes over. Also, when it comes out, where that bridge of glass has been, the punty, that's very sharp. So it has to go through a finishing process. So Northlands also have a cold working facility. So this will be lensed and polished back to looking like there isn't a join mark on it.